Good evening and welcome to the Morin Report. It is March 8th and we're here with Representative Russ Morin as usual every month.
Can't get rid of me.
But you also have a pretty special guest tonight, and that's Comptroller Kevin Lembo.
Yep.
So we have lots and lots to talk about with him. I don't think he knows what he's in for, but he'll soon find out. And, you know,
that's good for him.
he came.
I promised him dinner, so. No, Kevin's a good guy to come and join us.
I'm anxious to learn more about his office, what he does, and but I want to remind everyone, 7:30 call in, please.
Yep.
721-8814.
Or 721-TV14. And we do, you know, Kevin was great enough to come and join us. And, you know, in my business, I know what the Comptroller does and what Kevin does and all the good work he does. But I think it's important for the rest of us to get a better understanding, because it's really, he has his hands in a lot of stuff that are important to the state. And I'm very happy to have him here. As I always do, Kevin, I talk about some local stuff because there's a lot of good things going on in Wethersfield. Just want to remind some people, this Saturday, March 10th, the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Hartford. We'll have a lot of fun marching. Hope you'll join us. Kicks off at 11 o'clock. Wethersfield always has a big delegation. And Chief Flynn is one of the honorees. So I'm glad to be there.
Wear comfortable shoes, Russ.
I always do. Walking shoes. Taste of Wethersfield, April 14th. Benefits Historical Society. I think tickets are $35. If you want to go in a little early, it's $50, and that's at the Keeney from 6 to 9:30. And I want to remind people about April in Paris Spring Benefit Dance for the Nature Center. That's on Friday, April 13th. Boy, Friday the 13th. April in Paris from 7 to 11:30 right here at the Community Center. That's, I don't know, did they give us a price on that?
No, I didn't.
But you can go on the website, at the Nature Center website, and it'll be a lot of fun. I always go. And just remind everybody, the Wethersfield High School referendum. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm fully supportive of fixing our high school. The referendum will be held on the 24th. There's the Say Yes to Wethersfield High School group is doing a terrific job giving tours to people, getting them out there to understand, you know, what the project's going to entail, so people can feel comfortable with what the price tag is, and that, you know, truly we have to bring Wethersfield High School out of the 19th and 20th centuries and where it needs to be, and to keep its accreditation, and to really continue to keep Wethersfield High School and our academics at the high level that we've grown accustomed to.
Oh, that's why we live in Wethersfield. So that's the only thing on the referendum.
Yes.
Okay, and what's the amount?
$70 million.
Okay. Good.
And we've gone out, the state delegation, myself and Paul and Tony and John have all come out in favor. We're working with the group to do anything we can to help.
Good.
So that's that. I want to get into introducing our special guest, Kevin Lembo, our state comptroller. And Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Russ. It's great to be here.
Yep. And you know, we want to. I was reading through a lot of things you do, and you really have the job itself is interesting, but your resume is also quite interesting.
It is.
You know, so I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and let people learn a little more about you. But I'm going to ask you about Kentucky Colonel, and I mean, there's some, and again, you say, oh, that's got to be pretty funny. But when you read what it's about, it's very impressive, and I'm really would be pleased to hear about something like that.
Yeah, me too.
So great. Well, thanks. Well, it's great to be with you, and I appreciate the invitation to come on and talk about some of the things we're working on. And getting to be comptroller was not a sort of, you don't wake up, as a 5-year-old and say, I want to be comptroller when I grow
Mom,
up.
Dad.
It just doesn't happen because you don't know what it is, and most people still don't know what it is, even though every 4 years they end up,
We vote for you.
I was going to say pulling the lever, but I was dating myself, filling in an oval for that office. So I was the healthcare advocate before I became controller.
How long were you the healthcare?
I was there for 6 years.
And that seems to be, healthcare seems to be a huge issue that you've always been involved in, because that brings up the Kentucky Colonel issue as well.
Right, yeah. So I was the healthcare advocate, and I was the assistant controller before that under Nancy Wyman for 6 years as well. And then before that, worked in community health centers and worked in creating programs, public health programs. And did most of that all my adult life and figuring out how government could sort of be part of that and how do we finance these things and how do we maximize private payers and all of that kind of stuff. So when people say, well, you're a healthcare guy, why are you the controller? Well, we buy $1.3 billion of healthcare through my office. So I think it makes sense to have somebody in that office who understands how this all works. And I mean, I'm surrounded by a lot of great people who understand how it works. But it's really very helpful. It's a diverse portfolio of issues in the office, but I'm sure today we'll get a chance to touch on some of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you are going to have to explain Kentucky Colonel.
Oh yeah, we have to know.
I'm happy to. So Kentucky Colonel is one of those distinctions that are awarded. It's a nonprofit organization, and the governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky passes this on to people. Our youngest son was born in Louisville. And so as part of our gratitude to the people of Kentucky after we left with him, and what a great joy he's been in our life, we every year do a little bit for kids in foster care in that part of the country. And so in recognition of that, Governor Fletcher, he and I don't share a political party, but on this point we agree that we need to make sure we take care of these very vulnerable kids and make sure they find loving homes. So
that's wonderful.
Now, he's also the guy who buzzed the Capitol in his plane, but you know, that's a whole other story.
So you mentioned kids. You got others other than
I have
your
3,
youngest?
26, 24, and 12. So
wow.
26 and 24 are launched pretty much, and 12 is 12.
There must be some problems, Ed, if I'm getting a call from home. Is it going out?
Is that your mother?
It could be. Or my wife, one or the
Telling
other.
you to sit up straight in your
Yes,
desk.
I'm not chewing gum today, Kevin.
So the 24 and 26 are out on their own.
They are trying to find their way in the world, like most folks their age, and you know, the middle one's struggling with employment, like a lot of kids his age, you know, with an undergrad degree and big dreams and lack of opportunity right now.
Oh boy, that's tough.
Yeah.
And the little one's at home.
Little one's at home.
I guess he's not that little. He's 12.
No, he's sort of at that man-boy phase, you know,
Yeah.
but he's a great joy and a reminder of sort of what's important on the days when you just want to, if I had hair, rip it out. You go home and you realize, okay, this is sort of why we do what we do, and this is what's important. So,
oh, that's so good. How about, you know, I don't think I know a whole lot about what the Comptroller's office does. I mean, I know because I looked it up.
Right.
But you have a couple of divisions within the Comptroller's office?
We do.
7 of them.
Yeah,
7?
7 divisions. We're about a staff of about 270, 275 in 2 different locations. The big number of employees are at 55 Elm in Hartford, which is right there on the circle. I guess it used to be the little Etna building, sitting at the bottom of Bushnell Park. And so the controller is the fiscal guardian of the state, is the primary sort of job description. But under that category, I pay the bills. I buy the health care for state employees, retirees, and their dependents. We run payroll for all state employees. You know, we run the retirement system. The treasurer invests the retirement fund, but we actually run the retirement program. And then we'd have a number of units that do fiscal analysis and help us to forecast the budget and figure out where we are and where we want to be and what's holding us back. So it's a really diverse portfolio of issues.
That's amazing.
And always coming at you from multiple directions on any given day.
Well, and we've talked, your name is in the news a lot lately.
Oh, yeah.
In the interaction with the legislature, I mean, we have, it's kind of, I don't know if funny is the right word, but, the governor, OPM, they come up with their budget. Our Office of Fiscal Analysis looks at another budget. Your office comes up with a budget, and so we get sometimes different numbers.
That's right.
And it's from my perspective, I think the numbers are consistent, always changing.
Yes.
Depending on how revenues are coming in, or
That's right.
so I never get too nervous when I hear the initial reports, because I know that they can change.
Yep.
But maybe it'd be interesting,
Yeah.
for people to understand, why?
Right. Yeah, and there was an interesting editorial in one of the state papers this past week, and the headline was something like, Office of Fiscal Analysis has their number, OPM has their number, the Comptroller has his number. You guys need to get your acts together. But it sort of missed the point. And the point is that the governor builds his budget, and it's amended and adopted by the legislature. So any governor, this governor or governors before, have an interest in seeing their budget forecasts and all of that sort of move in the direction they planned. The legislature has their own view of that, and they have their own budget and so they talk to each other. But it's the controller's numbers that are the ones that are certified at the end of the fiscal year. The numbers that go in our financial statements. We break the tie, for example, when the legislature and the governor can't agree on a revenue estimate. The controller breaks the tie.
That happened once recently, didn't it?
There was a thread of it. We didn't quite get there,
Okay.
but they were able to work it out. It's amazing what a weekend and a good night's sleep will do to have level heads prevail. And the threat of having someone else make the decision for you.
Yeah, imagine that.
The best laws are often ones that never have to be invoked, right? So.
But I guess, as a layperson, I guess what I don't understand is how the entities come up with different numbers. Sure. I mean, you recently said on March 1st that you were projecting, and I know the numbers can change from day to day, but you were recently projecting a $20.7 million deficit.
That's right.
And that's not what the governor was
That's right.
projecting.
Yep.
So
the governor was actually projecting a small surplus, and he only moved into deficit when he started talking about making a contribution to the generally accepted accounting principles account, which we can talk about.
yeah.
But so far in the 14 months that I've been in office and the governor's been in office, our numbers have pretty much sort of done this. We've been a little bit apart, but moving in the same direction. This is the first time we went in opposite directions. And the reason why we had to depart from that track was, well, it's a snapshot in time. So on the 1st of March, we're looking at all of the revenue coming in. We're looking at all of the money going out and trying to forecast where we're going to be at the end of the fiscal year. There were two major things that really forced my departure with the governor on where we were. One was how quickly the earned income tax credit checks were going out, and that the budget number was about $22 million below our projection of where it will be. Now, I would argue that that's a good thing when you think about what the EITC is supposed to do, but it doesn't change the fact that they under-budgeted in that line. And then the second was more of sort of a conservative nod toward the budget. I tend to be a very liberal guy, but when it comes to the budget, I tend to be sort of conservative guy. And sometimes I think that's where most of Connecticut is. But the governor has a plan now to cut spending in certain agencies to try to close this gap and stay at least on budget through the end of the fiscal year. But when I look at how quickly those savings are being realized and the numbers of months we have left through the end of the fiscal year, I'm wondering if he actually can get there. Now, that's not saying he can't, because the governor has all the levers. The governor has all control over what they're going to do. But it was really an attempt to point that out as a potential problem and maybe to sort of scoot them along a little bit so that we can end the year in the black. The J factor in all of this is that if revenues pick up, then the whole conversation changes.
Yeah, and you did mention that.
We move in a very different direction.
In your report. And you also are talking, you talk in your, when you release this, do you release it every month?
Every month on the 1st,
Okay.
yes.
And what's your take on the housing? What do you think about housing?
Just like nationally, things are flat. And troublingly so. Foreclosures probably, we're probably going to see another blip in foreclosures now that the attorneys general have settled that large lawsuit across the country. That's going to free up some banks that were not taking final action on foreclosure to do that. The flip side of that is there's some money now in the system and some safeguards for some of these folks. So that's a huge pressure on housing. New housing starts are obviously way off, and even resales are off, not to the same extent, but off nonetheless. Consumer confidence, soft, but generally pointing up in a slightly positive direction. Unemployment number coming down. We're at about 8.2 when we were almost 9 at one point. We're about 0.3% below the national average. but we've only returned a third of the jobs
That's what I
that
was
we
gonna ask
lost
about
during
jobs,
the
yeah.
recession. So I think there were about 9,000 jobs last calendar year that were brought back in. And we need to do 3 times that number to get back to where we were in any reasonable time period. So it's good news that most of the indicators are pointing in a slightly positive direction.
Right.
Better slightly this way than slightly down, but they're just not moving at a pace that makes folks feel the confidence to spend and create demand, which is the way we get out of this.
I don't know if this is an appropriate question, but frankly, I don't care.
Benefit of being you, right?
Buckle up.
Yeah, pretty much. What I told you. Be careful.
When there are these disagreements with the governor's office, I mean, does that turn into any sort of adversarial relationship at all?
No, I mean, it doesn't have to. I think any disagreement, whether it's between the governor and the legislature, or me and the governor, or any other 2 people, has the potential to devolve into something ugly if people don't act like adults and treat each other with respect.
But everyone just understands they're doing their job, that they're
right.
charged
Would
with.
the governor prefer that I agree with his number? Of course. Would I hope that he understands why I need to report out the way I do? One of the most critical parts of this job, and I think you can go back to Bill Curry as comptroller years ago, and certainly during the Wyman years, is that the independence of this office is critical, because at the end of the day, we've got to call the balls and strikes as we see them. The people are relying on us to do that. And it's confusing, and they get mixed messages because all these numbers are all floating around. But at the end of the day, I need to be able to sort of look residents of the state in the eye and say, this is where we are at this moment, and here's how we can make a difference. So the governor understands.
Well, and it's like that with all of us. The governor is one branch, the legislative branch.
Right.
We have our ideas, and everybody thinks that we have to either agree on everything or disagree on everything, depending on where you are. We all have our role, and we all have. It's an important role, and we have to. From my perspective, we look at what the governor's numbers are and what your numbers are and ours, and hope that they're somewhere in the ballpark, because as I said, they're fluid. They're going to move. They're going to change day to day. Well, you monthly, and we know that. And so but we all have our own roles, and we all have to put forth that effort. And
So whose numbers do you use?
well, if you're us, we tend to go with Office of Fiscal Analysis.
Okay, because that's your nonpartisan
Correct.
That's right.
fiscal
Correct.
review there.
Doesn't mean we as legislators don't say, oh, the comptroller's numbers are, we get that, or OPM.
It's actually good to have those checks and balances.
I think
to
so,
get
but
the 3 different.
at the end of the day, as Kevin said, we have to. There has to be some agreement.
Yes.
Otherwise, we go to the ref.
Right. And we get paralyzed.
Yeah.
When that sort of breaks down to that point where there's not agreement, then you can't move anything else forward, because whether we're forecasting revenue for the next fiscal year and trying to figure out sort of what that year is going to look like, if you can't come to agreement, then everything sort of stops, and that's not good. Office of Fiscal Analysis, their number is even sort of lower than mine. I mean, they were, I think it was 161 million.
Yep.
And so, you've got this one really down number, our number, which is here, and the governor's number that's here.
That's interesting.
So it's a very challenging time. I don't envy legislators in particular right now, looking at some of the hard decisions that will need to be made around closing this year's deficit.
And like we don't have the benefit, as you said. I think you said it best. The governor has the tools to do a lot of this stuff. We can't say, Department of Transportation, you need to not hire, there's 400 people, or we don't have those powers. So we go by what we have, and well, we don't. OFA does, and we we're projecting, and it's not always right. I always I'm interested always to see where we end up and how close we actually are. But it's good to have checks and balances. Kevin's office, Nancy before him. That's how long when I've been around. It's been Nancy and you, and always as you said, regardless if there's agreements or disagreements, there's highly regarded. It's not like, we sit there and say, oh boy, what's he doing? It's absolutely,
Some may.
Yeah, well, they may.
They may.
They may, but most of us don't. We recognize that we need to do as good a job as we can to get our numbers in order, because ultimately there will be that negotiation with the Gov's office, and we'll go from there. But you talked about the gap, and I think that's something that many people probably don't understand, and I appreciate that the governor and you, and our leaders are all serious about that.
Absolutely.
Yep, but you have to say what gap is. Generally accepted
accounting
principles.
Okay.
Right. So the background is that the state has required municipalities and others to keep their books under generally accepted accounting principles for probably decades. I may be overstating, but it's been a very long time. But the state always managed to exempt itself from that requirement. And so I remember all those years that Nancy Wyman would go up to the legislature and to Governor Rowland and Governor Rell after him and say, we really have to put gap accounting in place. We can't continue to do this. We have a modified cash budget. The rating agencies don't like it. It's really not, it's sort of prone to shadows and things that you just don't want to do in public budgets. And every time there was an excuse, well, there's going to be a surplus and we have all these demands and this one needs a playground and this thing is happening, and those are real. Or we've been in deficit, and the answer was, well, we can't dig the hole bigger. What do you want us to do? Because when you shift to gap, it creates a gap deficit. So our gap deficit right now is about $1.7 billion, and that's the number between 0.5 or 20.7 and what it actually is. The good news is that the legislature and the governor signed Executive Order 1, I think it was, implementing GAP. Legislature was right behind it. And we're building toward a more honest budgeting for the state. Now, it'll take a number of years to get there.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
So right now we're generally unaccepted accounting principles.
Right.
Okay, good.
I report out under both GAAP and modified cash,
Oh.
and this office has been doing that for a very long time.
Okay.
So, but it's really, that's the less interesting number. The more interesting numbers are the budget, the agency-specific numbers. When you start building your budgets under GAAP from the bottom up versus analyzing from the top down, it becomes a much more meaningful exercise and really gets to the transparency and clarity that you want with your accounting method.
So GAAP gives you a more transparent
It's more
number.
transparent, and it requires that we book certain expenses when we should, and that we book certain obligations when we incur them, and we not play games about carrying bills from one fiscal year to another, and that's sort of, and it's not unique to Connecticut, it also isn't the end of the world when it occurs, but it's just not the right way to do things. So that $1.7 billion gap deficit is going to need to be paid off over time, and the plan was to throw $75 million a year, assuming there was a surplus, against that deficit and pay it off over time. So it's frozen and to be paid off. And that's the right way to handle it. But now when you're in a deficit position, finding an additional 75 to pay that is a challenge.
Now your office does do all the health care. You run all of that for the state employees and retirees, right?
And their dependents.
And something that's been implemented recently is the Health Enhancement Program.
Yes.
And that's something that you're implementing now. Can you describe that a little bit?
Well, that was a fun process to get us there.
And we're not quite out of the woods yet.
It's
It's a big change. So we're talking about, as I said, $1.3 billion in healthcare just through our office, and that doesn't include what Medicaid does and what corrections does and what the others do. Giving credit to the labor leaders and to the governor when they went into the room to negotiate some of the CBAC concessions because of the looming budget deficit that they were facing. One of the things they did was try to manage healthcare costs by pulling our members, the patients, closer to their care instead of pushing them further away. Now, most people know that in like the corporate world, if you're working in the corporate world, when that number comes in of what healthcare is going to cost, the budget officer in the corporation will say that number's too big. We need to bring that number down. So the way we bring it down is we have two tools available to us. One is to raise employee share, and the other is to sort of close down the value of the plan a little bit, so lower the actuarial value of the plan. So it becomes a cheaper plan and more expensive for the employee over time. And we've seen that go on for 16, 20 years. And people got further and further away from their benefit as their co-pays went up and their deductibles went up and HSAs came in and all of that. So the CBAC negotiators and the administration took the opposite tack, and that was, we have this employee base that's with us for a very long time. So unlike a commercial insurer who sees people sort of go in and out and they never see return on their investment on the wellness side, we can see the return on this. So we're going to incentivize care. We're going to take our 5 chronic disease states, you know, high cholesterol, cardiac, and some others, and we're going to incentivize those folks by waiving some copays and to take their medicine and to see their cardiologist and do the things that they need to do. For the well population, we're just going to ask that they have their physical whenever is appropriate for them, whether it's every year if you're over 55 or every 3 years if you're 35, and get the screenings that are appropriate for your age group, because we know if we identify that cardiac issue early and treat it and keep you out of crisis, we save money. If we help you manage your diabetes over time, there's not blindness and amputation and loss of work and all of that. So it's a model that was proven to work in a couple of places in Washington State, but this is the largest public sector attempt at something like this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, and you know, it sounds, when you listen to Kevin explain it, it sounds wonderful. It sounds easy, but when this was a process of negotiation with labor, and when you were trying to get the workers on board with this. There were many people. Even today, I was at a location where some people were still complaining about it.
Well, they should stop complaining now because they have to do it.
Well, they don't have to. They can pay extra.
They can pay, yes,
That's right.
That's
They can pay $100 a month.
$100 more plus you know, a higher deductible and some other things that they don't want to participate. They can do that. But our take-up rate was 98%.
That's not what was expected, though, was it?
No, what was expected and budgeted for was something like 50%. But
50%.
That 50% of our employees would say yes, and 50% would say no and pay the higher premium. But what happened was that 98% said yes. Now, not because they're big fans of the health enhancement program, but they wanted to avoid that.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
that was
financial,
substantial, sure.
Right? But now we're going to see how it plays out,
Oh, that's
because
interesting.
we're coming up on 9 months, and folks are going to get a reminder that says, don't forget, you need to have a physical. So.
Don't forget to call in, too.
Oh, it's time. 721-8814. This is a real good chance to talk to the Comptroller or Russ.
I'd rather talk to Kevin myself. But
Well, Russ, so would I, actually.
hey, I'm used to it. Trust me. But no, it's one of those things, too, because you said this is, I didn't realize that this was the largest undertaking of something like this, but it really is, and it has a potential to help a lot of people.
Yes.
I mean, it really gets you right in the, but it's a change. People don't like change. Nobody doesn't, people said, you can't tell me, and well, kind of can. Or you don't have, you definitely don't have to, but it was really,
it was interesting.
The negotiation part of this and getting people on board was not easy.
And on the state employee side, just listening to everyone, it was a little crazy.
Well, it got all bundled up with, even if it's a good thing by itself, it got bundled up with other concessions and things, and the anger around that. And so, I'm hoping as time,
not getting raises for a year and a half, all that stuff.
People have calmed
down. So you
down.
think colonoscopy, you think mammogram, you think no raise. I can understand how people say, what are we talking about?
Whose idea was this?
Right.
But on the flip side, we've been very fortunate. I think things are going relatively smoothly. I mean, like myself, I have myself and my wife on the plan, and I think 2 children still and
We can't
we-
beat our benefits.
and you know that aspect of it. But everyone has to follow through on the plan too. It just it's not the plan holder.
Oh,
The plan-
right,
So
it's
like-
everyone in the
so
that's
any,
right.
everyone that's involved in the plan. So kids, so everybody has to do their part.
Yeah.
And if not, you'll be getting a friendly reminder.
And I might have designed that a little bit differently, but again, you know, some of this is behind the curtain. They come out and they
Yes.
say, "Here is the agreement," and you know, and so
Figure it out.
that's right. Go, find the savings, make
Yeah.
it happen.
But you know, it's no, you know, I remember when some of the things legislatively done, and then I know when you were working with Nancy, the speaker did the healthcare pooling
Yes.
to try to get municipalities and not.
Yeah.
You know, it was always my goal to help small businesses. We have a phone
We
call.
have a phone call.
Okay.
Hello, you have a question or comment for the
Yeah.
Comptroller or Russ?
Hello.
Russ, hi, it's Tom Izzard. I was enjoying your show tonight.
Thanks.
Hey,
Ruh-roh. Ah, the joys. We're not hearing you at all, Tom. That's a surprise. See, Kevin? Surprise,
Hey.
surprise, surprise.
You got to be ready for anything.
And we are.
So, anyway.
we'll keep you if Tom could come back, but we'll.
Maybe just wanted to tell you that he's enjoying your show.
No, it sounded like there was a question in there
there
somewhere.
was.
Yeah, Heidi
So,
just-
but yeah, the pooling proposal was big. I
Yeah.
mean, this is, you know, when I ran for this office and I enjoyed it so much because you get to meet so many people and talk about, you know, your vision for the office and what you hope to accomplish. You know, we talk about transparency and we talk about building efficiencies and breaking sort of some of the nonsense down and trying to make sure we're doing things the best way we can. And the third area was common good. You know, what can the state be doing to make a difference in the lives of the residents of the state,
Yep.
the municipalities of the state? How can we do what we're doing in a way that brings the mass and the positioning to make a difference and save some money for, you know, so you don't have to talk
Absolutely.
about property tax increases.
Absolutely.
So pooling is one of those things. And it's now open for business,
Yeah.
which is kind of exciting.
So that means that municipalities.
We have a call?
That's right.
Hello.
yeah. Hello?
Hey, George.
Hello? George? Do you have a question, George?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
All right. Yes, for Mr. Lembo.
Yes.
Wait a minute, there's the other
Is there
call?
feedback? Yeah, no, keep going, George. Either that or turn your TV down. I think there's just some feedback.
Okay. Okay.
Keep going, George.
Yeah,
We're listening.
We'll hear you.
Okay, my question is for Mr. Lembo. And you had an earlier discussion about 3 different agencies making projections of deficits or surpluses.
Right.
Now, there's always, they're looking for ways to save money in the government by eliminating duplication. And I was wondering what would have to be done in order to work it out so that one agency is regarded as the official one to make have the predictions recommended, and the others, if they want to make them, they're advisory. But the one
Yes.
would be officially recognized as the state agencies giving out the official prediction
Numbers.
for deficit reductions.
That's right.
All right, George.
Is that in the Constitution?
I'm going to hang up now.
Okay,
Great,
George,
George.
thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
George.
Good question.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. You're right, George. At the end of the day, the controller's office. The controller's office at the end of the day certifies the number,
Yep.
and our projections are binding even in mid-budget year. So, for example, our Connecticut law says that if the budget gets out of whack by 1%, you know, the governor has to bring forward a mitigation plan. But that 1% number is decided by the number that the controller's office certifies. So
Okay.
when you sort of peel back the layers of the onion, it is the controller's office that you know is the final say on those kinds
Hence your earlier comment that it was wise everybody sat down in a room.
Yeah.
That's
after
right.
a weekend of sleep and relaxation.
and worked
come
through
back
it.
and worked through it.
That's exactly right.
And you're responsible for the bottom line.
Right.
You sign off.
And what we don't want to happen, I mean, I think we don't want the legislature to give up their budget office. We don't want the governor's office to give up their budget office because they're advising them on where, they are and where they want to be. And, you don't always have controllers, governors, and legislatures that are working together, and this isn't a party issue, a DR thing. This is just, the way it is.
Yeah.
So those independent looks are important, but we try to stay independent of that process, stand on the edge of it, and not get too involved in the inner fightings at the Capitol.
Well, thank you, George. Who's next?
Several people they've lost.
Yeah, somebody's there.
Hi, you have a question?
Oh, yeah, it's Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, Tom. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think it was probably a problem on my end. Hey, I was just wondering, in terms of the budget, I know that there's, some things you can control, other things you can't control. I was wondering, do we recognize much of a benefit from the mild winter in terms of savings of heat and lesser snow removal?
Yeah, good question, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
I know and I can speak from my days back at DOT, they would always come forth with a 10-year projection and try to come up with an average of what they were going to spend for storms and such. And so, of course, you always, when a year like this will help.
Right, absolutely right. And we'll see all that as we're projecting through. We're looking at the spending at DOT and in other places that are going to be impacted by storm-related expenses. And we watch that number and we factor it all in. We can see their historic spending pattern. And you could overlay, a graph of bad weather years along with budget years, and you can see this sort of how they go together. So yeah, this does bring relief. To Tom's question, even on energy assistance, that was many of us were holding our breath because there were some cuts in that area. Those folks who really rely on that weren't going to get the same level of access that they had in previous years. And we've had a mild winter, so that's a very good thing from that perspective. And we heat buildings just like everyone else, and we plow roads and we maintain bridges and we do all of those things. And unlike like a corporate sort of person who does those kinds of things, we can't walk away from these things when when they're no longer profit centers. So, we always have to plow the roads. We always have to maintain the bridges or fix the bridges, which seems to be the more appropriate characterization these days.
That's going to be a problem. That's a problem. We're going to be discussing this year. I've been talking to Tony Guerrero, the chair of the Transportation Committee, because there's some real problems, and we're going to have to come up with some solutions. Right. But no, I'm glad you brought up the heating assistance, because that's we're far-reaching into where our dollars go and whom they help, and so I don't know. It's an interesting year this year. It's been an October snowstorm. Right. Who would have thunk? Right. We have another phone call?
In a minute. Oh, yes, we do. Hi, you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do. My name's Tony. It's a question for both gentlemen.
Hey, Tony. Go ahead.
It's basically concerning Russ, your public hearing last week on redaction of names and records. Yep. I know I could go online and pretty much find everything about Russ Morin. And there was a bill that was passed last year that opened up public records, and now it's changed a little bit. Is there something that occurred that you think was good or bad for police departments, corrections officers, and public records in general? And I'll hang up and let you answer the question. I think it was a pretty good dynamic public hearing.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and basically what happened was there was a court case a court decision that came out and basically said that they couldn't, town clerks and such couldn't hand out any information because there were people that needed to be redacted.
Right.
Their addresses.
Their addresses and such. They were protected. And so people weren't, many municipalities were being advised by their legal counsel not to release anything. And that type of action could shut down town hall. No, because you're talking about title searches of land records. You're talking about, you know, everything, voting records, all kinds of stuff. So we went through and we had that e-cert bill, the emergency certification bill that basically kind of clarified it, because there were certain things, corrections officers, firemen, policemen, people that work in the judicial system, a whole slew of people that really, you know, want and probably deserve some protection, but there were certain areas that you just can't do it.
Right.
And you have to have land records open. The grand list, you know, that stuff needed to be open. And so what we did was we ended up crafting a piece of legislation that offered some protection for these people, where if you are one of the protected class, you would have to come into your town and you know, give them a petition that you want to be redacted in everything except those instances, land records and such, voting list would be redacted. But it didn't, you know, some people wanted us to go further.
Right.
Some people wanted us not to allow anything to be redacted. The FOI folks, Freedom of Information folks, would prefer that we didn't do anything.
Right.
Why did you feel you had to do an emergency certification?
We had to do it because at this point, the way they were interpreting the court cases, municipalities were just kind of feeling that they were going to be sued. They felt that they'd be sued if they gave out any of the information. So they wanted something done. And then obviously people wanted to go to the Secretary of State to get voters lists. She wasn't handing them out. So there's a whole slew of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we bump into this because as the payroll officer and the person who administers the pension funds, often folks will come to us for lists of employees and salaries and those kinds of things. And we know that there are certain folks that are protected. So name and like salary, for example, or even employee ID, because it's unique to us and you can't really do anything with it, sort of, you know, we feel okay and that we have to, in fact, sort of disclose that. But then addresses for us becomes a whole other thing. And that's what we push down to the agencies and say, if you want addresses, you have to go to Department of Corrections or DCF or wherever those employees
those
are,
things won't be.
because they know who's protected and who's not. You know, we just don't know.
So who's next?
Is there another question or comment? Hi, you have a question or comment?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Paula.
Hey, Paula.
Hi. My question is, if you could just explain to me how it is that we could be running such a high deficit when, you know, all our taxes were increased, everything is so much higher, that how could we possibly be having this deficit? I just have a little bit of difficulty understanding how this happens.
Sure.
All right.
Good question.
Thanks, Paula. We'll let the Comptroller answer.
Thanks, Paula, for the question. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a good one. Folks just assume that if there is an increase in the tax, in the income tax rate or a sales tax rate, or that suddenly there will be all of this money that will now come in and we won't have a deficit. And that was obviously the goal of those who built the budget. And it was, again, at that moment in time when they adopted that budget, the revenue projections and the expenditures were in a place where they would have ended this year in a surplus position, and we may still do that. It's important, you know, as a matter of perspective, to realize I'm projecting a $20.7 million potential budget deficit on a $22 billion budget. So as a percentage of the whole, you know, perspective is important. But it is frustrating to think that many of us are paying more but yet we're still in the hole. How could that possibly be? Some of the expenses that are run through state government, you know, we talked about plowing and heating assistance and those kinds of things that may be slightly down. Others are up. You know, the demand on certain programs, because unemployment is high and foreclosures are high and all of that, you know, that drives up the cost of government. So you know, that in a nutshell is what that is about. You know, the governor, as I said, has the levers to control spending in the agencies. Right. But he's got limits on it too. You know, at some point he can only pull his levers so much before he has to go back to the legislature and say, I've pulled this as far as I can. Legally, I need your permission to pull it more.
What about, you know, is there anything to it where if people, depending on when they're filing their taxes, I mean, do you see?
Sure.
I mean, that can fluctuate somewhat.
That's right. And we're, you know, we have to get through the end of tax season, but, you know, we all know what happens. So if I owe money, do I pay in February?
Heck no.
Of course not. You know, I'm going to wait till the end of the tax season. I'm going to pay at the, you know, toward the end of when I have to
Hold
pay.
on my money.
But if I'm getting money back, I want it now.
Of course.
So that sort of complicates the revenue flow. Capital gains is an issue. Wall Street bonuses and the tax on that is an issue. And also we had that change in the payroll tax that was adopted that caused all sorts of craziness where many folks may have been over withheld in their paychecks every week or every other week and are going to be back for their refund, you know, once they finish their taxes. So
we underpaid.
What a mess was
First
that?
time.
Right.
We had to pay for the first time for Connecticut.
Right.
Yeah, mine that I have to pay for Connecticut was probably, it was significantly more than normal.
Right.
And I actually went in through both my jobs and had some more taken out.
Yeah, we do that
because
too,
I was, you know, I knew things were going to go.
Yeah.
But, you know, it kind of evens out.
And there was a glitch in the, not to get in the weeds, but there was a glitch in the formula of how to take this out. So every time you said, I want to take an extra, you know, $20 out of pay period or something, it would then recalculate the whole thing, look back and think you had been under with. So you ended up actually making it worse in an effort to make it better. But, you know, the good news is that that calendar year curtain came down and now we just have to deal with the refunds.
And we're grateful for that.
Well, yeah, but I mean.
I know how many times I called your office, so I can't imagine.
Right. Well, I kept pointing to the Department of Revenue Services and saying, I'm not the tax man.
Exactly.
I can get blamed for a lot of things, but not this one.
Yeah, we were looking for anybody that could help us out.
Right.
But
we knew what was wrong.
Exactly.
But
Oh yeah, that was.
you get a little bit of the Three Stooges, sort of, you know, it's.
Yeah, no, it was. But you know, we move on. You know, you have so much that your agency does. You know, paying all the bills for the state, dealing, you know, the you know, payroll. Talk about one of the things that I think a lot of people that work for the state either some have frustration with or some love is the core system, the core CT system, which basically determines how you purchase, how you get paid.
Right. And I neglected to list that among the things that we're in charge of in the office. So I'm also in charge of those blinking boxes in the basement that, you know, make the data life and the financial life of the state possible in many ways. You know, the core financial system, core CT, is the state's enterprise system. So, you know, through there the bills get paid, through there the budgets get maintained. And it was brought online, you know, about a decade ago now for the first time.
Has it been that long?
It has been that long.
Yes, it has.
And, you know, any new implementation, as we talked about, new things are hard. You know, it was bumpy. And Nancy Wyman, to her credit, together with, you know, legislative leadership, got sort of through all that. And it's actually time for an upgrade. So we're now in the process of upgrading the system a decade later. But this is a system that has been called one of the most stable public sector enterprise systems in the country. So for as, you know, new as it still may be to some, and as frustrating as it may be to others, it really gives us a much better picture of where we are on any given day, and has made the work life and the data access of the state much improved over where it had been ever.
So everything goes through that.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Now, there's some exceptions. There's some agencies that are off budget. There are some that are in limited scope, they call it. And I was at a core meeting this morning, and it's one of those meetings where I feel like I have very little to offer. You know, I sort of sit there and I take it all in, and I understand pretty much what they're talking about. But these are some brilliant folks that make this train run every day, and I'm proud to work with them every day. And I just wanted to touch back on the pooling thing for a minute, if we could, because I think we didn't get through that. So this is a program for municipalities to now buy their health care for their employees and retirees through the state system, take advantage of the state's purchasing power, and in the analysis that we did of the first 38 towns or so, you know, 60 to 70% of them were seeing savings, 2, 3, up to 11% in this year. So here's what they're paying, and if they had been in the plan this year, it wasn't operational, but had it been, they were going to be down here. So we're now taking in data from towns, and they're coming forward with their utilization data and their premium data, and we're telling them what the price will be for them for next fiscal year to participate in the program. Another nice piece of it is that it's not only there's not only value in this larger scale purchasing, but we're creating these premium corridors over time. So their premium will only move 0 to 3% over or under for what we negotiate for state employees and retirees. Some of these towns, especially the smaller ones, we're seeing 18% increases from year to year.
Wow.
So the state often will have a 0% increase from one year to the other, because we're managing our claims, and we're self-insured, and we know what the universe is that we're working with. So,
are towns just clamoring for this?
it's not yet, but I have to give the benefit of the doubt to towns. They are appropriately suspicious of anything the state wants to do. And some of them have been burned badly before.
Oh, yeah.
So they're sticking their toe in, and they're taking a look. They're getting some pressure from their constituents to take a serious look at this. And at the end of the day, they're going to have to do a dollars and cents comparison between this plan and
it's
their
not a
own.
mandate.
It is absolutely not a mandate. And what's happening
opportunity.
in some towns is that we engage them and start running their numbers, and simultaneously their present carrier, their commercial carrier, will come in and find lots of premium relief for them. So would I love to have them in the big pool because it helps to drive down prices for everyone else? Yes. But the second best thing is if they can get a better deal from the person they're already with. So either way, it's an effort for the common good, for the state to do something that makes sense, to help municipal leadership and municipal residents not have to stare down the barrel of significant property tax increases. So
Exactly.
And will this be opened up to nonprofits as well?
next year.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the first group to come in is municipalities and boards of ed and the like. And then the second group is nonprofits that have contracts with the state, which is sort of liberally defined as a combination of state and federal grant money. They're going to be a little bit of a challenge because the benefit design is much different in a nonprofit than it is even in a municipality. So we're working now on marketing the municipal side and getting ready to launch, or at least do the analysis on the nonprofit side.
It's terrific. Something we've been working on for years, and I know the speaker is very happy. And it's just, again, people get nervous, but it's an option.
Oh, absolutely.
And if it helps towns save money, it's a great thing. No matter how you get there.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting.
You're also looking into some different types of retirement plans?
Yeah, this is a proposal that was not ours, but the ASME brought it to us and asked if we would take a look at it. And it's an interesting concept. So the bill that was heard, I think, this week, and a companion bill was heard last week, would create a public retirement savings program. So if you're a sole practitioner, and the administrative bump on a 401k is just like you just can't get yourself there, it's too much. Or if you're a small employer that wants to sort of offer a little bit but not be bound by certain percentages, they would be able to participate in this program. And the nice thing about it is its portability. So as long as you're in Connecticut, you can take it from one employer to the next. Now, they're all concepts at this point. It's a task force to study this issue. Nobody's saying that we're going to flip a switch and turn this on because it's complicated. But the treasurer would either invest the money or turn it out to the money managers that invest the state employee plan. And I think the vision at this point would be to have folks have an annuity at the end of that, so that they would have predictable income to supplement, let's say, Social Security. Because we all know that Social Security wasn't meant to stand by itself. It was meant to be part of a larger plan. But pension plans were one of the first things to go, even before healthcare. So many folks are out there without they may have a little bit of savings of their own, and they may have a little bit of Social Security, but no supplemental retirement plan.
So are you envisioning it almost like the pooling, except for pensions? Is there something totally...
Slightly different in that we wouldn't sort of be actively managing
Right.
these folks. We're not running the program, except that we'd be bringing the money together, investing it, and then
Okay.
arranging for the annuity on the other side. And again, these are just sort of my thoughts based on my reading of it. Others may have different thoughts.
The legislative intent and
Yeah, it's the legislature. There's going to be lots of different ideas about this.
and what we
that's a
see
good thing.
today and what ends up tomorrow are
That's right.
often two totally different things.
Yeah. Now, whether it'll go anywhere or not, I have no idea. It'll get some opposition from money managers who are doing 401ks and don't want to potentially lose that business. But look, even if it doesn't go anywhere, maybe it'll be a wake-up call to that segment of the market that they need to trim their administrative numbers and make things more accessible and affordable. So
Yeah.
Well, that's
Wow.
you know, there's a lot going on, and
I'll say.
you know, it's we're probably going to need to wrap up. So I would, first of all, again, I really thank you, Kevin, for taking the time. I know how busy you are.
No, it's my pleasure to be here.
Is there, if there's anything you want to close with, or let people know, we're just so pleased to have you in office, and it is a good relationship between. You know, I can always say from my standpoint, from the legislative, we respect you, we like you, we're glad you're there, and you know, this is all the stuff with the governor. Everybody's got a job to do. That's what I like to say. Governor's got to do his job. We have our job. You have yours. Hopefully, we kind of all, you know, meld together, and ultimately, we're working towards the same goals is to make the state better. And with you in that office, I know we're continuing a great line. Otherwise, we have to be careful because Nancy will come and stomp on me if I say the wrong thing.
She reminds me she's only up the block. So, you know, but the more discussion we can have and the more rhetoric we can put aside, the better off we'll be.
Absolutely.
For all of us. And I do want to make sure I remind people, I didn't say this before, but I'm doing safe graduation. My son's graduating this year. So one of the fundraisers is Thursday, the 22nd of March. If you have any old clothes in your closet and you want to get out, they actually pay. There's a company that comes and pays us by the pound.
Oh, that's great.
For clothes. So from 12:30 to 6 on March 22nd at the high school, you can clean out your closets for spring cleaning and help safe graduation.
Did you say March 22nd?
That's not the date?
No, I thought I must have misheard.
I thought I said 22nd.
Okay, then you
between
did, Russ.
12:30
Let's
and
just
6.
say you did. It's March 22nd.
But all kinds of stuff. So if you want to know more, you certainly could call
Oh,
me.
that's very cool.
But I always have to put in a shameless plug for Safe Grad.
Well, that's a great thing.
What's the theme?
I can't tell you that. You know that.
I ask him every month, and he does not tell me.
So thank you again, Kevin.
great to
Good
see
night to
you.
all. We'll see you next
night.
month.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Good night, Tootsie.
Thanks.